I'm sure it won't come as a surprise to literally any of you to learn that the NBA trade window is an absolutely hectic time to be a basketball fan, with so many rumors and stories breaking each and every day, touting competing scenarios that often conflict with each other. Today, we will run down some of the top trade rumors from the world of the NBA, so that you don't have to spend hours navigating through endless articles. You're welcome. Let's begin. First up, Celtics desperate to be rid of Schroeder. The Boston Celtics, who currently lie in 9th place in the Eastern Conference, have been pegged by many to be one of the most active teams in all of the NBA franchise throughout this upcoming trade window, with one of the biggest moves on the agenda being the transfer of Dennis Schroeder out of Boston. Reporter Mark Stein has suggested that it is widely expected for Schroeder to leave the team at some point for the trade deadline on the 10th of February, going on to suggest that there probably won't be too much difficulty in finding him a new home. The Celtics aren't intent on trading him away due to poor form or because he's a bad player, of course, as the German has proven himself as a capable backup who can step in to a starting place when needed, such as when Marcus Smart or Jaylen Brown have been benched through injury or COVID-19. On a $5.9 million deal, he also represents a rather cheap financial investment for a solid point guard, meaning he can potentially be a clever trade for any team in the market. With all this in mind, why are the Celtics so desperate to trade him away? Taxes, of course. With Boston having accepted that they won't have much to play for due to their distance from the title, and with Schroeder's contract coming close to expiration anyway, the Celtics are keen to cut their wages down by offloading Schroeder so that they can get their expenditure beneath the luxury tax line. The plan from the Celtics' perspective is that they avoid the luxury tax during what is a write-off season, which leaves the door open for heavy investment for next season without having to worry about potentially triggering the even more punishing repeater tax. It could also be suggested that, whilst Schroeder has talent, he doesn't quite fit into the system at Boston, with his preference for having the ball in his hands clashing somewhat with the likes of Smart, Jason Tatum, and Jaylen Brown. Trading him away would absolutely bring Boston below the luxury tax line, as they are currently only $2 million above it. With all of this in mind, it seems certain that some sort of trade is going to happen. It's just a matter of when. Moving on, Simmons struggling for move? Goodness, will this situation ever end? Those who have been following Ben Simmons closely will know that all the way back in August of last year, the American point guard put in an official request to be traded, declaring that he no longer wished to be part of the Philadelphia 76ers. There has been plenty of back and forth on this when it comes to determining who is at fault, with Simmons himself citing comments made by both his teammate Joel Embiid and coach Doc Rivers as two of the primary reasons for his desire to get out of Philly. Simmons went on to place his Philadelphia house up for sale, missed the 76ers preseason camp, and has refused to play for the team ever since, despite the fact that he is currently under contract with another 3 or so years remaining. Between then and now, there have been some occasional attempts to remedy the situation, but for the most part, things remain the same, with Simmons still unwilling to play. The 76ers have, obviously, fined him for every missed game, which has led to him becoming the most fined player in the history of the NBA, with his tab having reached a reported $19 million just recently. The Sixers, despite the drama and inconvenience of having a top name like Simmons going on strike, have managed to keep themselves in the title fight and currently sit in 3rd place in the Eastern Conference. This has resulted in a situation where they are very much willing to get rid of Simmons if it means bringing in another talent who will, actually play, but they aren't desperate by any stretch of the imagination. Team president Daryl Morey recognizes that Simmons is a perennial all-star and only 25 years old, meaning he is a hugely valuable commodity within the NBA, so the 76ers are only ever going to accept an appropriate trade offer. The problem? Well, nobody really seems intent on putting in such an offer. There's no doubt that many teams would happily count Simmons among their roster, but to actually make a trade for him would require a large offer from a determined decision maker, and many teams seem to be making the decision that he just isn't worth it. This could be down to hesitance over bringing in someone who is literally on strike against his current team, something he could very well repeat. Regardless, Simmons and the 76ers don't have long left in the trade window, so they best get to work, or else Ben might find himself racking up a lot more fines. Next up, potential fire sales? One of the fun bookends to last season's trade window was when the Orlando Magic frantically offered a bunch of their players for trade, offloading Aaron Gordon, Nikola Vucevic, and Evan Fournier as the deadline began to rapidly approach. This sort of spontaneous, action-packed flurry shocked many fans, with the decision to trade away so many players at once being questioned by some. Regardless, we could be set to see more of these so-called fire sales as we approach the 10th of February, this season's deadline, with a collection of teams already reportedly offering up multiple of their players for trades. The Indiana Pacers, for example, have allegedly started to tout the services of centers Domantas Sabonis and Miles Turner. Sabonis, a two-time All-Star, is a bit of a surprise, but apparently the Wizards are pushing hard for a potential trade, so he's certainly one we can see moving to the team. Turner is probably a little less likely, as his injury history can make him something of a liability, though his talent and ability could definitely be enough to convince teams to take a gamble on keeping him fit. Portland Trailblazers, meanwhile, are desperate to avoid the repeater tax, as they are tasked with an almighty rebuilding job, if they are to do so whilst maintaining the team's balance. Yusuf Nurkic and Robert Covington are set to see their contracts expire during next offseason, so they are the most obvious of choices when it comes to outgoing Portland trades. But structurally, the team is also struggling with a bloated and expensive backcourt, so the likes of CJ McCollum, who has been linked with a trade to the New Orleans Pelicans, and Norman Powell could also see themselves being offered out. A major concern for everyone connected to the Trailblazers, however, is that if the team is stripped of too many players, it is likely to upset their star man Damian Lillard, who has spoken already about not wanting to see too many players leave. Regardless, the priority appears to be cutting wages, and sports writer Grant Hughes has suggested that everyone on the roster, bar Lillard and Anthony Simmons, should be on the table for potential trades. Finally, crunch time for Bradley Beal. To close up today's video, let's talk about the Washington Wizards and the absolute headache they face when it comes to Bradley Beal. God, being an NBA team president must be incredibly stressful, and I'm sure nobody knows that better than the Wizards GM Tommy Shepard. Beal was selected by the Wizards as the 3rd overall pick of the 2012 NBA draft. Beal has since gone on to become a 3-time All-Star and one of the top shooting guards in all of basketball. But now, the Wizards find themselves frighteningly close to losing him completely. Beal's contract is expiring, and he can become an unrestricted free agent in July, meaning he'd be able to sign a deal worth up to $180 million with any NBA franchise, a blow that would significantly weaken the Wizards whilst also bolstering one of their rivals. With this in mind, the Wizards essentially have 3 options. They could try to sign him to a new deal, but estimates suggest that re-signing him would require an absurd contract worth $241 million over 5 years. Beal is the face of the Wizards, and there can be arguments that he is worth every bit of that fee, but by the end of the contract, he'll be 33 years old, and there are already questions being asked about potential signs of decline creeping into his game. Another option, then, is for the Wizards to try and trade him, though this will obviously weaken them and upset the team harmony in a huge way. The final option would be to let things run their course, but the thought of losing Beal without gaining anything in return is no doubt a sickener for fans and the management team alike. With just under a week left in the trade window, whatever decision the Wizards commit to, they might want to hurry up. And that's everything. Do you think Beal will leave the Wizards? Will we see any shocking moves in the final days? Will Simmons manage to force his trade? Let us know down in the comments, and until next time, we'll see you soon.